JudgeCast. This is episode 16 of our YouTube video series focusing on how to become a level 1 judge. I'm Bryan and I am joined this evening, afternoon, morning drive to work by the one and only Marcos Sanchez.
Hello, everybody.
Yep, we are starting this episode down a man, but hopefully increased in excitement.
Woo! We're down a featherer, sadly, but we'll get through. Even though we're down a featherer, we do still have somebody else to talk about, and that is our sponsor for both this episode and this series, which is Judge Foundry. Judge Foundry is a membership-based nonprofit organization serving the U.S. and Canada in providing certifications for tabletop gaming officials. They manage everything to do with obtaining and maintaining your certification and provide educational resources like this one here to ensure that every Judge Foundry certified judge has the knowledge and skills that they need to be successful. When it comes to running Magic events at your local game store or at a larger international convention, Judge Foundry is a great resource for you to certify your skills. For more information on Judge Foundry, visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to find out how you can earn your level. You can also join the Judge Foundry Discord to chat and interact with the Judge Foundry judging community in the US and Canada. The links for both are in the description below.
In this episode, we're going to discuss the most common keyword actions. There's a lot of keyword actions, so we're not going to cover all of them, nor are we going to cover every corner case in depth. But if you wish to explore any of these topics outside the scope of what is needed for the L1 exam, you can delve into our extensive library at JudgeCast.com or search for us in your podcast app of choice. Our podcasts are typically at least an hour, so you'll get more detailed discussion, humor, insight, and of course, our orotund warblings.
Jeez.
Yeah, I'm starting to run out of adjectives.
The suffering continues even though Charles is not here.
Right.
But that's okay. So let's talk about first, what is a keyword action and how does it differ from a keyword ability? So a keyword action is typically going to be an English verb. It's an active word. It's something that you do. It's different from a keyword ability, which is typically a noun or an adjective. Keyword actions are verbs that define a thing that you're doing. A lot of times Magic cards will have some reminder text that will summarize what these keywords mean, but those are just a summary. Sometimes they'll have an exception case that can't fit on a card or just something a little bit more than that. So let's talk about some keyword actions. What do we got?
All right, first up is activate, and it's first up because it's A. All right, activate, A. To activate an activated ability is when you put the ability on the stack and pay its costs in the expectation that it's going to resolve and have an effect. You can only activate an ability when you have priority. Some cards have additional restrictions on when you can activate abilities, but in general, the thing that lets you know that something is an activated ability is the colon. There will be a colon in the text or the rules text of the ability.
Next up, we have attach. Now, attaching is a thing that you can do with auras, equipment, and yes, fortifications, all three of them, I guess. You attach them to objects or players and put it on that object or player. So if you try to equip to something that the aura, equipment, or fortification can't be attached to, it just doesn't move. It goes, well, I can't do that. What are you doing? And says no. Now, if you try to reattach to a thing that aura, equipment, or fortification is attached to, it just does nothing because it's like, I'm already here. What are you doing? These are very judgmental equipments and fortifications and auras. But
fortifications are very judgmental.
Yes, they are. That's why there aren't many of them. But if you try to attach something that isn't an aura, enchantment, or fortification to anything, it just does nothing. So you're just stuck with those auras, enchantments, and fortifications if you want to attach. Now, attaching an aura, equipment, fortification on the battlefield to a different object or player causes that object to receive a new timestamp. Really important.
That aura, the aura, equipment, or fortification.
Yes. That aura, equipment, fortification gets the new timestamp, not the object that you're attaching it to, but any of the effects that aura, equipment, or fortification is granting or affecting on that object. And to unattach an equipment, that means you move it off of that creature. Now, equipment are special because when you unattach them, that just means it exists on the battlefield waiting for you to put it somewhere else. Actually, fortifications as well will stay on the battlefield, but auras, they are a little bit more finicky than that, and they go poof and disappear when state-based actions are checked. But if there is an aura, equipment, or fortification that was attached to an object or player and it just stops being attached because what it was attached to changes zones or becomes attached to something else, that counts as that object becoming unattached in case something actually cares about that.
All right, next up, we're going to talk about two terms that are very, very similarly related. We're going to do that a few times during this episode. One is cast and play. Okay, those are different terms that mean something very similar. So to cast a spell is to take it from the zone that it's in, that's normally the hand, put it on the stack, pay its costs, and with the expectation that it's eventually going to resolve and have an effect. Okay, you can cast a spell whenever you have priority. To cast a card is to cast it as a spell. All right, now I said that it's very, very similar to the word play. Now what play means, two things. It's actually a little bit special. So it means casting a spell if the card that you're told to play is a spell, or play a land if the card that you are told is a land. So to play a land means you just put it onto the battlefield from the zone that it's in, usually the hand. The player can play a land if they have priority. It's the main phase of their turn. The stack is empty. They haven't played a land this turn, all that stuff. Playing a land is a special action. Okay, but some effects instruct you to play a card. All right. And so just as an example, okay, Prosper Tomebound says whenever you play a card from exile, create a creature token. Okay, in this particular context, it can be playing a land by putting it on the battlefield or casting a spell.
All right, next up we have counter, or to counter something. Now, countering a spell or ability means to effectively cancel it and just yoink it right off of the stack. It doesn't resolve, and none of its effects actually happen. A countered spell is removed from the stack and then just put straight into the graveyard. You're not given a refund or a chargeback of anything that you paid for that spell. You put it into it, and if it didn't work, well, too bad. You're done. Especially if, for example, you cast a crop rotation and that gets countered, well, you still sacrifice that land that was a cost to cast the crop rotation, so sorry about your luck there. Now, notably, this word is specifically the action of countering a spell. The word counter is ambiguously somewhat confused sometimes with counters, which are objects that are put onto other objects in the game, into permanents in the game. So, specific difference here. Here we're talking about countering a spell, not letting it actually resolve from the stack.
Okay. Next up is the word create. So to create is a thing that you do with tokens. When you create one or more tokens with certain characteristics, you just put that number of tokens with the specified characteristics onto the battlefield. Easy peasy. It should be noted that if you are copying a permanent spell on the stack, it is going to resolve as a token, but from a rule standpoint, that is not considered creating a token for the purpose of any replacement effects that care about tokens being created.
Next up, another twofer, we have to destroy or sacrifice. So, to destroy something, let's start with that. To destroy something, you're going to move it from the battlefield into its owner's graveyard. You do not pass go, you do not collect $200, you just go from the battlefield to its owner's graveyard. This is not to be confused with sacrificing, which also means to move something from the battlefield to its owner's graveyard.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Which is also not to be confused with some of, but not all, state-based actions that also move objects from the battlefield to the graveyard.
There's a lot of moving from the battlefield to the graveyard.
Yeah, to be fair, there's a lot of different things that will get something to go from the battlefield to the graveyard. Destroy is just one lane on the highway of silly ways you can get to putting stuff in your graveyard. But it does have some very specific rules meaning. So a permanent is destroyed only as a result of an effect that uses the word destroy, or as a result of the state-based action that checks for lethal damage or damage from something that has death touch. So deal a damage to a creature from another creature that has death touch, bam, that damage is enough to destroy that creature. Now, regeneration can replace a destruction event, and the mechanic of indestructible just flat out ignores the destruction event. So it'll still attempt to destroy that creature, but indestructible just goes, meh, don't care. Now, all of that is different from sacrificing, in the sense that anybody can destroy any permanent. You can destroy your own permanents if you want to, but only an object's controller can sacrifice it. And since it's not a destruction effect, regeneration and indestructible don't interact with sacrificing at all. But in both instances, you can only sacrifice or destroy something that is actively on the battlefield.
Right. You cannot destroy a card in the hand. That's called discarding, which is our next keyword. Keyword action. Okay, so to discard a card, we move it from the owner's hand to the player's graveyard.
Right? Not again.
Yeah, it's a lot of moving things around. If you are told to discard a card, either by rule or effect, you get to choose the card to discard unless you're explicitly told otherwise. Some effects make you discard at random or let the opponent choose. There is a rule regarding the characteristics of a card discarded to a hidden zone, but this is for the L1 test and we want to keep something back for the sequel. I'll give you a hint, it involves the Library of Ling.
Yeah, that's for discard 2 Electric Boogaloo. Yeah. Moving on to our next one, which is exile. So to exile an object, you put it into the exile zone, not the graveyard this time. Yay! So to exile, you're going to put it into, well, exile. You can do this from anywhere. So you can exile a card from your hand, from your library. I guess ante if you're playing dumb games of Magic, I guess. Or from the battlefield, wherever. It's all fine.
All right. Next up is fight. So all the mechanics that we've talked about so far have been things that the players can do. You exile, you discard, you cast. Fight is an action that creatures can do. Okay, a resolving spell or ability may instruct creatures to fight. As they do, each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power to the other creatures. This is not combat damage. Okay, you can also find cheeky ways to make creatures fight itself. And when you do, it's gonna punch itself for its power twice. All right?
Woof.
Yep. One thing to note, though, is it takes 2 creatures to fight. If one or both of those creatures aren't on the battlefield anymore, aren't creatures anymore, aren't or are illegal targets, then the fight doesn't happen at all. And just as a reminder, this is not combat damage. Even though it sounds like they're battling, it's not combat damage.
So wait, they don't just end up punching the air and having an imaginary fight like they're in Fight Club?
No, I was thinking more of that Simpsons episode where Bart's like, I'm gonna start swinging my fist like this.
Equally lunatic.
Yes.
Love it. All right.
All right.
Next up is goad. Now, goaded is actually a designation. So this is the first time we've hit this one, where a permanent can have a designation as is given by a resolving spell or ability. When this happens, the creature is, quote, goaded until the next turn of the controller of that spell or ability that goaded the creature. Now, being goaded actually adds on a combat requirement to that creature. It means the goaded creature A must attack each combat if able, and B must attack a player other than the player that goaded the creature, if able. So if I can only attack a player other than the player that goaded the creature, how does that work in 1v1?
Yeah, this is typically a mechanic for multiplayer games like Commander. But when it comes up in 1v1, realistically, it just means that creature's got to attack each combat if able.
Yeah.
Because it can't attack a player other than the player that goaded that creature.
Right. And the if able means you try to do that, but if you can't and it still has to attack, well, guess where he's pointing? Womp womp.
So the next up is mill. All right. So this is relatively new as far as keyword actions go, but to mill a number of cards means that player puts that many cards from the top of their library into the graveyard. All right. You can't mill more cards than you have in your library. So if you have 2 cards left and a resolving ability tells you to mill 15 cards, you're going to mill only 2. If you have 2 cards left and a spell or ability has a cost that requires you to mill 3 cards, you cannot pay that cost. Now, here's something that's a bit unintuitive. If an effect refers to a milled card, and that card is milled to exile, I'm doing finger quotes that you can't see. If that card is milled to exile because of something like Rest in Peace, it's still milled, even though it didn't go to the graveyard. And effects that refer to the milled card can still find it in that other zone, as long as that zone is a public zone. Now that's different from I mill to the graveyard and then a trigger moves it. It is milled directly to that other zone, like in the example of Rest in Peace.
Yeah.
Right?
Because as long as it takes the route straight to wherever it goes, even though it tries to go to graveyard first, but if it gets a detour around there, it still went where it was supposed to go, right?
And we didn't mention it with destroy and sacrifice, but the same thing happens there as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, a creature is still, if something with like Rest in Peace is out, a creature is destroyed but goes to exile. It's still destroyed, or a sacrificed creature is still sacrificed. Okay, a discarded card would still be discarded.
Yep.
Okay, even if it went to that other zone. Now that's different from when we were talking about zone change triggers. When we talked about dies, I'm going off script here, but I think it's
oh no.
Yep. Oh no, I'm going off script. Dies is a trigger that triggers when a card goes to the graveyard from the battlefield. Okay, so it's specifying its origin and its destination, right?
Yep.
Whereas this is like so sacrifice is a journey and dies as a destination.
Yeah. Sacrificing is all about the journey.
Right, it's all about the journey. Discard, all about the journey. Milling, all about the journey.
Jeez.
Dies is about the death. Go on.
All right, let's move on to regenerate now. And we've already touched on this a little bit, but let's really dive into it. Regenerate means 2 things based on context. First, if a resolving spell or ability regenerates a permanent, it creates a replacement effect on that permanent that protects it the next time it would be destroyed this turn. The real text of regenerate in this context is regenerate, let's call it permanent, means the next time permanent would be destroyed this turn. Instead, you remove all damage marked on it and its controller taps it. If it's an attacking or blocking creature, remove it from combat. However, some effects refer to when a creature is regenerated or goes through that whole process. Putting the replacement effect shield is not considered regenerating in this context. In this context, the regeneration shield has to go pop in order to be considered regenerated. You've gone through the process of that near-death experience, you saw the light, and then you came back a new man. And also, spells and effects that say the creature can't be regenerated doesn't mean you can't put regeneration shields on the creature. It just means that it won't do anything to protect your creature to that specific effect.
Yep. One other thing, Marcos, when you were talking about regenerating, to be clear, and this is in the ability, it's to regenerate it. You said remove all damage, tap it. If it's attacking or blocking, remove from combat. regenerated creatures do not die, go to the graveyard, and then come back onto the battlefield. They never leave the battlefield.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, the destroy effect that would otherwise destroy it is, again, what would move it from battlefield to the graveyard. But because this is a replacement effect, it stops that from happening and instead says, remove damage, tap it, remove it from combat. That's it.
All right. Next word up is reveal. To reveal a card, you just show that card to all players for a brief period of time. Okay? If an effect causes a card to be revealed, it will be revealed as long as necessary to complete all relevant parts of the effect. Okay, so reveal to all players and then do a thing. Reveal your hand. Player chooses something and you discard. You stop revealing after the relevant parts of the effect are done. If the cost to cast a spell or activate an ability requires revealing a card, that card remains revealed from the time a spell or ability is announced until the time it leaves the stack. So you could, in theory, like have a counter war being involved and you've just got this revealed card. It's still in your hand, but it's revealed. Yep. Same thing with triggers that cause a card to be revealed. Okay, so let's use the miracle ability as an example. You reveal when you draw, but then the cast trigger goes on the stack. A player can respond to the cast trigger while the card is revealed. It hasn't been cast yet, and it's still in your hand, just revealed. Revealing a card does not cause it to leave the zone that it's in, and a card that's currently revealed can be revealed again. Okay. Yep. For example, if you're playing with a static effect that causes you to play with the top card of your library revealed, and something makes you reveal the top card of your library, cool. You just do it. Now, some effects tell a player to look at one or more cards. In this case, looking at a card uses all the same rules as revealing a card, except only one player gets to see it. Okay, so revealing is showing everybody, and looking is just you looking at it.
Yep. And one other thing on that, you'll notice that in regular play, when like human beings are sitting down and playing, and you're not just playing online, you will observe sometimes that some players will just say, "Oh, this card was revealed," so they'll just like leave it face up on the battlefield or like next to their hand or on top of their hand, whatever it is, as a kind of courtesy to let you remember what it was that was revealed. But that doesn't mean it's still continuously revealed, even though you're going through the rest of the turn, another turn from there on after, and eventually they pick it up once they've drawn a new card or something like that. It's not staying revealed that whole time. It's just, they're being nice and making sure that you remember what was revealed.
Or they're just trying to save time so you don't have to write everything down.
Yeah.
It's like, nope, I leave it out. Let's just get playing again.
Get to it, right?
Oversharing is fine in this context.
Yep. All right, next up we have two keyword actions that are very similar. So again, we're going to talk about them together. Here we're going to talk about scry and surveil. They're both very similar. Let's talk about scry first. Scry always comes with a number. So scry 1, scry 3, or scry X even. In these cases,
Scry me a river.
Scry me a river, yes. Wasn't there a podcast that was called that? I don't know. In these cases, you're going to look at the top however many cards of your library, and then you're going to put any number of those cards that you looked at on the bottom of the library, and then put the rest of the cards on the top of the library in any order. If for some reason, perfect example is something like scry X, where X becomes a value that is calculated based off of something else in the game. Let's say you end up with a result of 0. A scry of 0 is the same as not scrying at all. Things that trigger when you scry will not trigger from a scry 0 because scry 0 basically is meaningless. Whereas surveil, which is very similar to scry, only instead of you taking some number of those cards that you're working off of and putting them on the bottom of your library, instead, some number of those cards will go to your graveyard and the rest go on top. Otherwise, it's effectively the exact same mechanic.
It's like scry to your graveyard instead of scry to the bottom of your library.
Exactly. But there is one extra rule for surveil. If an effect allows you to look at additional cards while you surveil, those cards are included in the batch of cards that you're surveilling.
Yeah.
There are just some effects that have, like, whenever you surveil an additional 2 cards or something like that. Also, whenever you see something like scry 1 and then scry 1, that is not the same as scry 2, even though some people love to shortcut that. But remember, scry 1 just means you look at the top card, you decide, does that go to the bottom or stay on top? If you decide to keep it on top, guess what? That second scry 1, you already kind of did it. Whereas scry 2 is you look at the top 2. If you want to keep them on top, you could rearrange the order. You could put 1 to the bottom, 1 on the top. Very different than scry 1 and then scry 1 again. Same with surveil 1 and surveil 1 again.
All right. Next up is search. Whew. Okay. So searching for a card in a zone means to look at all the cards in that zone and find a card that matches the given description. Now, if you're searching a hidden zone, like the hand or library for a specific card type, you can, quote, fail to find even if the cards are there. So like a rampant growth where you're looking for a basic land, you can fail to find. Philosophically, this is because the zone is hidden, and you can't really prove that there was no basic land to find unless you reveal the entire library and show the opponent, hey, look, there's no other basic lands in there. All right.
So it allows you to be just really bad at searching.
Right. It has to. However, you cannot fail to find from a public zone. Okay, so the battlefield, graveyard, that kind of thing. If something's telling you to search the graveyard for a basic land, and there is a basic land in there, you're gonna have to find it. Okay, if you are told to search a hidden zone for a quantity of cards, then you must find that many cards. Okay, unlike basic land, okay, where you would have to reveal your entire library to prove that there are no basic lands. You know if there's 3 cards left in your library. So if you're told to search for 3 cards and you have 10 cards in your library, you cannot fail to find. Okay?
Makes
if an
sense.
effect... Yep. Now here's another kind of weird thing. If an effect contains search instructions, the searched for cards are only revealed if the effect tells you to. And I said this was kind of weird. That's because I was thinking of a different rule. But yeah, if an effect contains search instructions... Okay, like one of the typical cards is Demonic Tutor, right? You search for any card, put it into your hand, doesn't tell you to reveal it. The search cards are only revealed if the effect tells you to. But if it's like search your library for a basic land, you're going to have to reveal it to prove that you got a basic land. All right?
Right, because in the Demonic Tutor, searching for a card, well, you found a card. Obviously, that is a card. You don't need to prove anything further. Whereas if you're searching for a quality on a card, you have to show that it actually has that quality.
Yep. And then if multiple players are searching at once, if an effect has multiple players search at once, each of those players search at the same time, but then decide which card to find in app-nap order. Okay, so we're all looking at the same time, and then I go, I found this. And then the other person says, now that I know what you found, I can... find this, and so on and so on.
Love that.
Yep.
All right. Next up is a mechanic that everyone knows very, very well, shuffle. So shuffle is a keyword action, which essentially just says you need to randomize a face-down pile of cards so that no one knows the actual order of what's in that pile of cards. Sometimes an effect will have you search a library for cards, then shuffle the library, then put the found cards somewhere else, or maybe on top of your library, or somewhere else in a certain position, etc., etc. These cards are not included in the shuffle. This shouldn't need to be said. Obvious. It seems kind of obvious, right? Search for a card, shuffle your library, then put it on top. Well, you shouldn't shuffle your library and then hide away that card all over again.
Right. That card is part of your library when you're... Yep.
Yeah, but, sometimes instructions tell you to do one thing and logic tells you to do another. We tell you, in this case, logic works.
This was actually right here the rule that I started to talk about when I was in searching, and I was like, oh, somehow it's deleted. let me talk about that. And then I actually read what was on the page, and I'm like, oops.
Yep. Now, if any effect causes a player to shuffle one or more specific objects into a library, and somehow those objects change zones, so they're no longer around to get shuffled, you're still going to actually shuffle the library. So that sounds a little weird, so let's talk about this with an example. If the card Vigor is exiled from your graveyard in response to its last trigger that says when Vigor is put into a graveyard from anywhere, shuffle it into its owner's library, you're still going to shuffle your library even though you're not actually shuffling that Vigor in. The trigger is still going to resolve. It's still going to ask you to shuffle it. Even though it's not there, it doesn't matter. You're still doing as much as you can. Now, the same applies if you're told to shuffle a set of objects, like shuffle any number of target cards from a graveyard into your library. If there are no legal targets in that graveyard, well, you're still going to shuffle.
Assuming that the effect is encountered, right?
Yes, if there are 0 legal targets for you to shuffle in, this says any number of target cards.
Right.
If you choose 0, you still end up shuffling, even if you didn't end up targeting anything.
Yeah, just wanted to be clear, because that's kind of weird where we said, like, if there's 0 legal targets, like if you chose 3 and now there's 0 legal targets, but if you chose 0 legal targets.
Yeah, a little silly. Just like this next example, which is also very silly. You can shuffle a library with 1 card in it. You can shuffle a library with 0 cards in it. It's still a shuffle, and it will still trigger things that care about you shuffling.
What is the sound of 1 card shuffling?
The single card flick that somebody's just holding the 1 card in their hand. Yeah, it's that.
Ugh. Dislike.
Yeah, it's just them constantly doing that little corner flick to like place it on the table once they've decided to finally cast the spell they've been holding for a good 30 seconds in their hand. Yeah, that's the sound. Or, it's the sound of judges screaming. I can't tell.
All right. So now we're going to talk about a thing that is not actually a keyword action or keyword ability, and I'm not entirely sure why I decided to put it in the script for this particular episode, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, and it's called mana weaving. Okay. Mana weaving is a process where a player takes some or all of their land and starts to do something like order it like spell, land, spell, land, and then they start shuffling. Okay. And people say, well, it's fine because I'm just putting them in at random. But what you're doing is you're actually stacking your deck. Okay. And even if you don't know what the specific lands are and the specific spells in the mix, your deck is not randomized because it's spell, land, spell, land. It's not shuffled. Now, a thing to consider here is if you say, well, I shuffle my deck afterwards and I shuffle it thoroughly so it doesn't matter. Okay, well, if you shuffle your deck thoroughly to the point that it doesn't matter, then why'd you mana weave in the first place? And if the response is, well, because I get better draws when I do, then you're not shuffling good enough to undo the mana weave, and that's kind of cheating.
Yep. You've literally either wasted everybody's time doing additional futzing around with your library, or you're just straight up cheating and trying to get away with it. Either way, I ain't having it.
I wouldn't necessarily say that you're straight up cheating, okay? Because you might not realize that's what you're doing.
You're inadvertently cheating.
But if the reason that you're doing it is because I get better draws, you are manipulating your deck for an advantage.
Also, you don't have enough data to know that you're actually getting better draws. You're just buying into a fallacy. It's not real. Just shuffle your library and move on, please and thank you.
If you're not shuffling, if you're not shuffling enough so that mana weaving is providing you an advantage, then you're not shuffling well enough. Anyway, I think what triggered it was the conversation about since we were just talking about shuffling, and I was like, mana weaving, shuffling. Okay.
Yep.
Rant over.
On to tap/untap, which, let's face it, they're two sides of the same coin, so we're going to talk about them together. So to tap a permanent, you turn it sideways from an upright position. Now, Funny, weird thing about this. Did you know the rules don't actually specify that you have to turn it clockwise? Almost everybody does, oh, you have to tap it 90 degrees to the right. But it doesn't say you have to. Just thought you should know. Something else, only untapped permanents can be tapped, and only tapped permanents can be untapped. Now, this is different from spells and effects that will say tap target creature. You can still cast that on a tapped creature. It's just not going to do anything. But the actual defined action of tapping only is changing it from the vertical state to the sleepy state, or the sleepy state to the upright state when you're untapping, for anything that cares about those types of things happening.
All right. Next up is transforming. Transforming a permanent is to turn it over so that the other face is showing. Only double face cards and double face tokens can transform. If you try to transform something that isn't a double face card or a double face token, it's not going to transform. And if you try and transform it and it would turn into a sorcery or an instant, it just doesn't transform either. While transforming a permanent uses the same physical action as turning a permanent face up or face down, it's not the same. Even though it's the same physical action, it's different game results. Remember how Destroy and Sacrifice had the same physical action, but they had different game meanings? It's the same situation here.
Yeah. Next up, we have Proliferate. To proliferate, you choose any number of permanents and or players that have at least one counter, and then give each one an additional counter of each kind of counter that person or permanent already had. Personment? Yeah, that's what we'll call it. So if a player has a poison and an energy counter, and you want to proliferate that player, you have to give them one of each. You have to give them another poison counter and an additional energy counter.
All right. One last keyword action is to explore. Certain spells and abilities instruct a permanent to explore. To do so, the permanent's controller is going to reveal the top card of their library. If the land card is revealed this way, that player is going to put that card in their hand. Otherwise, that player puts a +1/+1 counter on the exploring permanent, and you may put the revealed card into the graveyard. If multiple permanents are instructed to explore at the same time, the first player in Apnap order who controls one of those exploring permanents chooses one of them and explores. And you just keep repeating that process until everybody's explored. Also,
fun.
one other note: a permanent explores after the process described, about revealing the cards and stuff like that, is done, even if some or all of those actions were impossible. Like if you couldn't put a +1/+1 counter on the exploring permanent, or there were no cards on the top of their library. And that's not all the keyword actions, but that's most of the relevant ones. Now, Commander kind of changes things a lot, where Venture into the Dungeon might be more common, or God help you opening an attraction.
Oh, no.
Or facing a villainous choice or something along those lines. But these are the ones that we think that are going to be the most common. And if you are studying for your L1, all of these are fair game for the L1 test. Whereas the other ones, if it's at your FNM or something like that and you're doing Commander, just go look it up.
All right, so with that, once again, we would like to thank Judge Foundry for their support in sponsoring this series, for helping you earn that level 1 certification. Make sure to visit judgefoundry.org and click on the orange Become a Judge button to learn how you can join the Magic judging community in the US and Canada and earn your certification with Judge Foundry.
Join us next time as we continue our series for earning your L1 certification, and we talk about keyword abilities. And if you want to reach out to us, we have our own Discord server for judges new and old, fans, and anyone who supports the judging community. The invite link to our Discord is in the description below, as well as our JudgeCast and individual social media links. If you're a fan of our content, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel and ring that bell to be notified of when new videos in this series are posted or when a new episode of our full podcast is released. Make sure to check back with our channel's playlist for our complete L1 series, as well as Learn to Judge playlist with episodes from JudgeCast's history focused on helping you become a better judge. And as always, you can find everything related to JudgeCast at judgecast.com. With that, I'm Brian Prilliman, and I keep it fair.
I'm Marcos Sanchez, and I keep it fun.
And I'm Brian Prilliman, and I keep the pattern of me saying some sort of nonsense at the end of these episodes, even though Charles is missing.